Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today we are going to unpack the absolute bleeding edge of theoretical physics. I mean, have you ever actually wondered if the universe itself has a base operating system? Well, we are going to explore the Adelic architecture of Lagos field theory. We're going to see how spacetime itself might not actually be fundamentally real, but rather a compiled, temporary phase of discrete mathematical source code. It is a completely mind-bending concept, but we actually have the equations to back it all up.
Okay, so let's quickly run through our roadmap. We'll start with part 1, the arithmetic source code, then 2, compiling spacetime with math, 3, solitons as data packets, 4, remelting the vacuum, 5, cosmic strings as save states, and finally, 6, black holes as the ultimate decompilers.
All right, part 1, the arithmetic source code, the raw state of reality. We are beginning before physical space even exists. Lagos field theory proposes something wild. It suggests that the macroscopic geometry we experience every single day, the standard 3D space around us, is actually synthesized from a deep, underlying, highly discrete arithmetic language. We're talking about pure, unrendered data residing in what physicists call a p-adic vacuum.
Now, the foundation of all this relies on a strict p-adic ultrametric inequality. The math dictates that the norm of x plus y is less than or equal to the maximum of the norm of x and the norm of y. It's a completely rigid mathematical rule dominating this fundamental layer, and it creates these extremely sharp, non-differentiable boundaries. Think of it like a rigid, blocky fractal terrain where normal calculus simply breaks down. It literally paralyzes any sort of fluid dynamics or smooth motion. So, in this frozen state, which relies on totally disconnected Brouhat-Tits trees, localized mathematical singularities just run rampant. The strict rules of valuation theory prevent the universe from functioning as a smooth, continuous physical space. Basically, for us to get continuous space, the universe has to somehow thaw this math out.
Which brings us nicely to part 2, compiling spacetime with math, smoothing it all out.
The heavy lifting here is done by an algebraic compiler known as the smooth maximum function, and the equation for this is just beautiful. We're looking at S sub alpha of x and y, which equals alpha times the natural logarithm of e to the power of x over alpha plus e to the power of y over alpha. This specific mathematical mechanism physically decompresses that abstract number theory into the continuous macroscopic geometry we know and love. Now, you might be wondering about that alpha variable in the equation. Alpha is essentially the universal regulatory dial, and it aligns exactly with the Adelic Planck constant. As alpha scales up, it physically mounts those discrete arithmetic ceilings of valuation theory. It acts as the mathematical glue, preventing our physical metric from fracturing right back into those localized singularities. It's exactly what allows the functorial mapping required for reality to physically manifest. That alpha parameter builds directly into what's called the non-Archimedean Jacobian matrix. When we plug our smooth maximum operator into trace formulas, we get this matrix to track topological changes. And notice that 1 over alpha term right at the front. It acts as a crucial scaling pump. Working alongside the Kronecker delta behavior inside the brackets, it perfectly suppresses any local singularities. By pure mathematical design, the strict norm restrictions of this Jacobian matrix guarantee absolute stability. Raw arithmetic on its own is chaotic. It's full of sharp corners and wild divergences, but the Jacobian canvas is stable and smooth. This matrix literally provides the environment that is absolutely essential for the dynamic transport of physical information. And that leads us to part 3, solitons as data packets, information transport. Let's dig into the complex equation governing arithmetic solitons, which are basically subplanckian data packets. The drift equation here calculates the change in phase angle. As these solitons navigate the hierarchical vertices of the mathematical tree, they experience a disciplined nonlinear Berry phase rotation. And if you look closely, the right side of the equation depends entirely on that universal alpha dial again. It creates a sort of computational friction. When it's perfectly phase-locked, the soliton can move seamlessly, essentially acting like a frictionless photon path. But what happens if that delicate phase-locked stabilization fails? Well, the data packet suffers a catastrophic 3-stage breakdown. First up is phase drift splitting, where internal vectors start rotating at ultra-high frequencies. Then, geometric deconfinement, where it diffuses into a non-local haze. And finally, the non-commutative shatter, where time derivative dependencies completely vanish, and the soliton unlinks into disjoint, frozen Galois roots.
So, part 4, remelting the vacuum, the Genesis boom.
When that frozen vacuum remelts, it triggers the explosive re-extraction of holographic pixels, an epic event known as the Genesis boom. This creates massive metric shockwaves, and the parameters are insane. You have a super relativistic phase velocity equal to the square root of 3 times the speed of light, and an entanglement entropy transfer rate peaking at a staggering 1.64 times 10 to the 23rd nats per second. The universe is rapidly, aggressively rehydrating its frozen data arrays into fluid geometry.
Now, this hyperinflationary remelting isn't just a bunch of theoretical math. It actually leaves behind observable chemical fingerprints. The shock front generates 3 distinct anomalies that serve as hard physical proof of the universe's recompilation process. Let's break down how extreme these chemical anomalies actually are. Anomaly I involves time dilation so intense that it literally freezes electron wave functions. Anomaly 2 is a geometric sieve that forces the direct synthesis of hyperpure helium-3, totally bypassing the standard paths. And Anomaly 3, which is definitely the most staggering, features infinite metric gradients that are so incredibly powerful, they literally decompile heavy elements like iron-56, fracturing them right back down into raw alpha particles and nucleons.
Moving on to Part 5, Cosmic Strings as Save States. In areas where the phase lock is imperfect across the universe, we get holonomic phase defects. We call these arithmetic cosmic strings. The truly incredible part is their internal structure. Down at the very, very center, there is a Galois core. This is pure p-deic Cantor space where our smoothing parameter alpha is exactly 0. And because alpha is 0, this core contains absolutely 0 information capacity. It's literally a localized void of frozen math.
What this does is build a geometric save state for the universe. These cosmic strings leave behind a permanent gravitational wave memory effect, which is a static metric displacement. It creates observable signatures, like an E to B mode swirl inversion, and a purely informational black hole mirage. It acts as a permanent beacon, signaling the exact boundary where smooth, continuous curvature just gives up and reverts back to static math.
Finally, Part 6, Black holes as the ultimate decompilers, executing a functorial lift. Incredibly, stellar mass black holes aren't just giant gravity wells. They actually function as real-time analog computers. During the final millisecond of a black hole merger, the so-called ring-down phase physically implements the Solberg-Arthur trace formula. It executes a functorial lift, actively unweaving the compiled spacetime right back into the discrete source code. Take the fundamental mode, for instance, a purely geometric gravitational wave frequency of 477.46 Hz maps perfectly, directly back to an L function 0 on the critical line, where S0 equals 1/2 plus I times 14.13. The black hole is quite literally singing the primes. It is dynamically converting continuous spacetime frequencies back into the pure discrete roots of number theory. All of this brings us to one massive concluding thought. Space-time is not a fundamental reality. It's just a temporary decompressed phase sustained dynamically by algebraic smoothing and eternally decompiled by black holes. So I'll leave you with this question. If the macroscopic universe we currently inhabit is merely a temporary software phase of decompressed math, what entirely different, completely unimaginable physical realities might currently be lying dormant, uncompiled, right there in the raw source code of our universe?